let's get started. Here we are, as always, in our spot. The bystrict channel is swift. The current is flowing in the opposite direction, as can be seen. The water here is very clean, creating a good environment for wildlife. Wild boars live and dig here, leaving many tracks. As always, as usual, we switch on the program, and then I'm going home. We turn on the GPS, and we wait for the coordinates of our location to be determined. Here, all the coordinates are set. We mark the spot where our location will be. Then we can go into the forest. There are a lot of wild boars in this forest. This is evident from the disturbed ground. Here they were searching for roots and acorns, everything they like. There is a lot of dead wood here. The fogs have been good lately, and now oyster mushrooms have already appeared on the tree. They are not very big, but they will do for us. Here lived wild boars in this dense forest, and I found some fascinating little mushroom. I have never collected such a thing before. It has such a upachka. Suspicious. I won't take this one. If you know, please write in the comments what kind of mushroom it is. Interestingly, here we found a small oyster mushroom. A small oyster mushroom was discovered. It is located at the top. You need a stick and lightly knock it under this root. Look. I'll show you the technique for knocking down mushrooms. And here we have a little mushroom. Under this tree. Last time I cut the oyster mushrooms, there were no oyster mushrooms on the tree. And now they have appeared on the other side. A little, of course, but in a way that is not too significant. Fundamentally speaking, it will do. Vladek is currently busy cutting. He has a very magnificent mushroom knife with his such fresh and beautiful mushrooms. Here is one of the trees. At the very top there is a whole mycelium of oyster mushrooms all over the trunk. They have already slightly wilted in the process. They will gradually ripen and eventually spread throughout the forest. No one can reach them there, so it is absolutely beneficial for the growth of the neighboring mushrooms. We approached the channel, and here we could see a tree in the distance. It had slightly turned green. And here a whole bunch of oyster mushrooms has grown. It is clear that there were mushroom pickers here who cut them before. But indeed, due to the fact that there is a lot of moisture near the channel, they have managed to grow well. Not very big, quite firm. Someone here has broken the oyster mushrooms with a stick. Well, let's cut them. They need to be cut carefully so that they do not break off with the entire mycelium, as close to the tree as possible. You need a sharp knife for this. These are such beautiful mushrooms. The nice fallen tree is green. In the distance, a pair of oyster mushrooms can be seen on it. Not very big in size, but nice and quite pleasant. We will cut them in half. It was time for breakfast. We went to the channel. There aren't many mushrooms yet. We haven't come across very large mycelium, but everything is ahead. It's important to always take with you
a thermos with refreshing unsweetened tea, because I'm very thirsty, and a delicious light snack that is satisfying. The forest here is covered in moss, and honey mushrooms are growing on one of the trees. This is a very tasty mushroom, especially when pickled. Vlad will cut it. Here we stumbled upon a beautiful patch of red-capped mushrooms. It's also a very nice and vibrant mushroom. It has a distinctive and unmistakable mushroom aroma, which means that they can be safely consumed by humans. Here on the tree, Vladik indeed found winter honey mushrooms. They also hid in the bushes, growing in a dense patch, which is why the mushroom pickers did not see them. Here we have moved to a new island. Let's walk around and see what is here. There are indeed also numerous broken poplars here, and on one of them, oyster mushrooms are growing very closely together right at the top. We will either knock them down with a stick or cut them. Here they have been tested. We will either knock them down with a stick or gather them. On the same tree below, oyster mushrooms are growing. They are hidden under the root. So the tree receives a significant amount of nutrients. We will carefully knock them down with a stick. Here is a tree that has indeed fallen, and under it, quite a large oyster mushroom has indeed grown. We will cut the mushrooms down by the root and on the tree, and there are also mushrooms visible further along. And if you go further, you need to look around. The mycelium is also visible on the wood chips. It is clear that the mushrooms have recently and rapidly flourished and expanded, beautiful, with a bluish dark gray color. And again to the channel. Here the water is visible, and next to it, oyster mushrooms have grown on the tree. Again, these roots of the dense, beautiful mushroom cluster, they can be trimmed. There is a small colony of oyster mushrooms which are thriving on one of the fallen trees in the damp and shaded environment of the forest. It hasn't grown yet, but essentially the tree is promising it's gradually being covered with mushrooms. Here, Vladik found a tree that is absolutely abundantly covered with oyster mushrooms. They started growing from the very beginning to the end. It is quite evident that the belt goes completely all the way around and encircles the entire tree. The tree, as we can see, is already quite old. Some oyster mushrooms have been cut, but new ones have grown. We will trim them. Mushrooms prefer damp places and lowlands. There is more moisture, less wind, and more steam there. Therefore, fog condenses in greater amounts in these areas. You should cut not too close to the edge, so that less debris and wood falls onto the mycelium, just like this, right at the edge. Let's put it in the backpack.
They grow either individually or in whole mycelium clusters, depending on the amount of mycelium. It spreads majestically over the tall poplar, and furthermore, an unclear, tiny little mushroom is clearly visible. As I look at him, I notice his velvety appearance, smooth and soft like fine fabric, exuding a charm that captivates my attention. It smells like mushrooms, but I definitely won't take it. The forest is serenely calm today, completely windless. You definitely need to search carefully in the thickest parts where they are hiding, and thoroughly. Oyster mushrooms are adept at concealing themselves in their natural surroundings, making them difficult to detect by both predators and foragers. Here is a broken tree, and beautiful oyster mushrooms have grown in the branches below. We will cut them off. The oyster mushrooms are of a delicate color and have a very fragrant smell of the forest. It is evident that wild boars have been running here, and the bark has even been stripped from the tree along their trail. And if you look further up the tree, you can see yellow honey mushrooms that are hiding at the base of the tree. There are also many honey mushrooms of this large size here. They are already ripe and can be cut. Here the bark has also fallen off, and it seems wild boars have been running around because there are tracks. In the distance, Vladik found something. Let's take a closer look and carefully observe who he has over there with him. And see. He was indeed lucky. He came across a wonderfully nice fresh oyster mushroom. The forest is quiet and calm today. There is no wind, and it is indeed cloudy, making it harder to navigate. Without a plan, it is difficult. Here is a tree that is almost destroyed, already just a pile of dust, but even here there are oyster mushrooms. Of course, there are only a few, but they are growing. Almost there, in the thick of the thicket. The forest here is extremely dense and lush. The forest was thick with many branches and a dense layer of underbrush, forming a complex environment. Here Vladik is slowly and carefully walking around in the park and suddenly, to his surprise, found something. Oh, I found a gorgeous mushroom colony. Just like this, beautiful. On top and on top. So it can be cut in a manner that is easy to handle and manage. On the poplars, you can see white spots. The white spots indicate that there is mycelium of oyster mushrooms here, and they will soon start to grow. Here we found a large tree, and oyster mushrooms have settled on it. Not many individual specimens, but they are growing a few. This is a single species, and there are also oyster mushrooms further along. Take your time to carefully inspect each tree in the area. As you look closely, you will notice that there are some oyster mushrooms growing on the bark of the tree. These mushrooms are known for their unique shape and color, which makes them stand out. Inspecting the trees thoroughly is important to ensure you don't miss these fascinating fungi. The leaves are dried and roasted, but the main thing is that there are no insects. They can be eaten. Vladik will cut. Vladik found some wild mushrooms there, which means he didn't walk in vain. This path is quite beautiful, serene, and dark, with a mysterious allure. The item can be cut into smaller sections using tools like knives or scissors. This cutting ability is a key feature, making it adaptable for various uses, whether practical or creative. By altering its form, the item becomes more versatile and useful in different situations. Cute. We approach Krypal Forest, and here are some synthetic oyster mushrooms on the tree. They are slightly wilted, but they can be eaten. They are dry. Here are also some interesting mushrooms. I don't know their name. They have this structure. They smell like mushrooms in general. Does anyone know what they are called? Write in the comments. Well, our mushroom hunt has come to an end. We gathered oyster mushrooms in a full bag. We also have a backpack. There are probably about 10 kilograms.